A lot of freshmen played exceptionally well this season, and in this video we will talk about which 10 freshmen had the most impressive seasons. It was pretty hard to narrow it down because there were a lot more than 10. For the sake of this video, only true freshmen will be considered, and this top 10 is purely based off of the 2023 and 2024 season, not based on what they might look like in the future. I did do a video before the season, giving a prediction on who I think the best class of 2023 players will be. I will follow up that video sometime in their sophomore seasons. The reason for that is because sophomore year is when you can really get a good idea of what type of college player they can become. I would say the main deciding factor for this list is, if you took one of these freshmen off their team, how drastically would that impact the season? This recruiting class is one of the rare times where several freshmen were able to make a huge impact, even from their first game. I'll briefly go over honorable mentions. Talia Scott averaged over 20 points her freshman year, but she also only played 20 games due to injury and personal reasons. While she played well, I don't think it's fair to rank her over 10 players who had to play a lot more games against tough competition. I heavily debated having Tessa Johnson on here because of how important she was during the tournament, but I ultimately decided against it because of the overall body of work. She was great during the tournament, but I think other freshmen have played better when considering the entirety of the season. Ashlyn Shade just barely missed the cut for this list. These players being honorable mentions is an indicator of how strong this class is, because if this was last year, they easily would have made it. At number 10, I have Samaya Nichols. She was practically invisible because she played for Kansas, but her scoring ability as a freshman is scary. She averaged a little over 15 points while shooting 46% from the field and 40% from the three-point line. She is 6 feet tall and is just as mobile as anyone on the court. Despite her being a freshman, she's able to finish through contact. She shoots over 80% from the free throw line, which prevents people from just hacking her. Samaya Nichols is an advanced analytics person's dream. She has the layup, and 3 only playstyle modern coaches seem to love. It's very early, but if she can continue to grow her game, she can become a solid 2 guard in the WNBA. You're going to hear me say this a lot in this video, but she is a very skilled player on the offensive side of the ball. But the defense was not there. She's in the bottom percentile of defensive rating and defensive win shares. She was able to get a Kansas team in the tournament that otherwise wouldn't have been there, which is why I have her in the top 10. But contributing more defensively is something that really would have got them over the hump. KK Arnold was not expected to start this season, but injuries forced her to step up earlier than expected. And she delivered. She is someone who gives you a bit of everything, and this is evidenced by her averaging 9 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds, and 2 steals. What I really like about KK is that she doesn't have to score to impact the game. Her ability to distribute and defend means she can always have a place on the basketball court. It's also why I give KK Arnold the edge over Ashlyn Shade and Samaya Nichols. Ashlyn is a better scorer, but KK Arnold's versatility allows her to be effective even when her shot is off. Her free throw shooting is 67%, which is not ideal considering she is a slasher. Ideally, a drive-heavy player needs to punish people from the free throw line. Her three-point shooting can improve as well. One thing I'm curious about is how Gino handles KK Arnold next year. She got significantly more playing time because of injuries, and to her credit, she took advantage of the opportunity. She balled out. But UConn just got Caitlin Chen from the transfer portal and added 3 guards through recruiting. AZ Fudd returning only complicates things further. It's not a big deal whether or not KK Arnold starts, but what is a big deal is how many minutes she gets on the floor. Ashlyn Shade and KK averaged over 30 minutes a game last year. With how well they played, it will be hard for Gino to significantly cut their minutes for other players, but we will see what happens. Mikaylah Williams was given a starting position from the jump, and she showed exactly why. She scored 17 points against a good Colorado team on 50% shooting, and she never looked back. For the season, she averaged 14.5 points on an efficient 47% from the field. Mikaylah Williams is a true 3-level scorer, as she can utilize any spot on the basketball court. When her 3-point shot is off, she is great at getting mid-range jumpers. And when she is making her 3-point shots, the other team is in massive trouble. She is very good at being able to create her own shot, or moving off the ball to get an open look. As great as Mikaylah Williams was, she could have been so much better. It would have made more sense for LSU to go the Madison Booker route and teach her point guard skills. That way, she's able to impact the game in more ways than scoring. This would have been better long-term compared to trying to teach a transfer point guard skills. Mikaylah's defense could improve as well. That being said, her overall freshman season went very well. Kymora Johnson is a very underrated player that was unfortunately held back by lack of team success. If it wasn't for Hannah Hidalgo having a historic season, Kymora would have handily won ACC Rookie of the Year. Even as a freshman, it was clear she was the best player on the Virginia Cavaliers team, and in general, one of the better players in the ACC. She's a versatile player that can do just about everything. She has the skills of a pure point guard, but is also an effective scorer. She averaged 15 points, a little under 5 rebounds, 5 assists, and 2 steals. She arguably had the hardest job out of any freshman in the country. She had to be the starting point guard while being the leading scorer at the same time. Hannah Hidalgo and Madison Booker had to do the same thing, but they also had a lot more talent to work with. If Virginia made the tournament, I would have ranked her a lot higher, but I have to factor that in. Kymora has a much worse supporting cast compared to anyone else on this list, but we have seen freshmen like Tania Latson will an undermanned team to the tournament before, so if a player is good enough, it's possible. The next step for Kymora is improving her efficiency. Shooting 41% from the field and 32% from 3 is not ideal, but I'm more lenient on that because she had to carry such a huge load for her team. Iowa State's specialty is developing versatile forwards, and Addy Brown is the next in line. Addy Brown is Alyssa Thomas if she was a worse defender, but had a better jump shot. She doesn't have the flashiest or most highlight-intensive game in the world, but it's effective. When it comes to offense, there's not much she can't do. She can hit threes as she shot 38% from behind the line. She's great at scoring off the ball in catch-and-shoot situations. She can put the ball on the floor to score as well. But what really sticks out to me is her passing. She was by far the best passing big man in the country. She is able to make any type of pass, which allowed her to get 5 assists per game. Offensively, there's very little holes, but on defense, she is a traffic cone. She gives up way too many open shots for my liking. This is especially a problem in the games where her offensive output isn't enough to match what she is giving up on the defensive end. If she improves defensively, she can be an All-American level player. The chemistry she has with Audi Crooks is unreal. With Texas leaving the Big 12, Addy Brown and Audi Crooks will be in a race by themselves for Player of the Year in that conference. In terms of who is better between Audi Crooks and Addy Brown, I think it's splitting hairs. Their games are so intertwined, it's hard to say one is definitively better than the other. I think they both make each other a lot better. Audi Crooks is a matchup nightmare. Her size makes her difficult to defend. Everyone knows what she's going to do, and they can't stop it. To properly defend Crooks, you need a really strong post player that can't be moved around easily, or you need a really tall player that can be pushed out of position and still block the shot, like Cameron Brink. Audi Crooks is near unstoppable in the paint, but she's more than just a 3-foot from the basket type of scorer. She is a very good mid-range shooter. Even when they are contested, she can hit them. Audi Crooks averaged 19 points, 8 rebounds, on an amazing 58% from the field. The biggest problem is her defense. Just like Addy Brown, she gives up open shots. She absolutely gets hunted on that side of the ball. Her conditioning also needs to improve. She has to come out of the game a lot to take breathers. That being said, Audi Crooks had an incredible freshman season. If it wasn't for Madison Booker being one of the best players in the country, Crooks would have ran away with Big 12 Freshman of the Year. No one passes the eye test like Fulwiley. There isn't a single player that can do some of the things that she does, and she can single-handedly take over the game. She is absolutely box office. You have no idea what she will do or when. The issue is consistency. There's some games where she's completely unguardable, but there were way too many times this season where she was held to under 10 points on inefficient shooting. However, one thing you can always count on is her defense, and that's why I have her this high, despite other players averaging better offensive numbers. Fulwiley always shows up and causes problems on defense, while most talented offensive freshmen are not great defenders, and in some cases, defensive liabilities. Her stats are also naturally going to be lower because South Carolina has to share the ball with so many people. She averaged 12 points per game, which doesn't sound like much, but it was second on a team that went undefeated and won a national championship. South Carolina is so good they probably win the title without Fulwiley, but I do not believe they would have been undefeated. Her electrifying plays has swung the momentum, in South Carolina's favor many games this season. It's the one player the other team can't really account for. They have no idea what Fulwiley will do when they go against her. It was very interesting this season watching Malaysia figuring out how to balance when to do highlight plays and when to do something basic. As more time goes on, the better she will get at balancing the two. The crazy part is, as many highlights as Fulwiley has had this season, she has plenty more we haven't seen yet. It's not a matter of if Fulwiley will become a superstar, it's how soon. This list was difficult to make, but what was not difficult was the top three. These three players weren't just the best freshmen, they were some of the best players in the country. Madison Booker could have had the perfect excuses for not playing well her freshman season. Texas point guard Rory Harmon went down in the middle of the season, and there was no replacement. Madison had to learn how to play point guard when there were no plans for her to do so at the beginning of the season. Not only did she not make excuses, she became a second-team All-American. She inherited a difficult situation and found a way to become even better. This is not something many players could have done. She averaged 16 points, 5 assists, and 5 rebounds for a season while shooting 46% from the field and 87% from the free throw line. In Big 12 play, she averaged over 20 points per game and was the first freshman ever to win Big 12 Player of the Year. She was able to lead a Texas team that was dealing with several injuries to the Elite Eight. Madison Booker is effective because she is a matchup nightmare. A really big guard that no one can seem to be able to speed up. She is able to score from anywhere and is able to distribute to her teammates. She needs to reduce her turnovers and be more efficient from three, but she overachieved this season. While I wouldn't call Madison Booker a lockdown defender, she is far from a defensive liability. The Associated Press recognized her as a top 10 player, and she deserved it. When Hannah Hidalgo dropped a 30-piece against a team as good as South Carolina in her first collegiate game, it was very clear she was going to be a problem. The crazy part is, Hidalgo's 30 points against South Carolina wouldn't even make the top 5 in terms of performances she had against ranked opponents. When a freshman scores over 20 points, it's a massive accomplishment. For Hidalgo, it's expected to happen. She was the only major conference player besides Caitlin Clark to average a 25-5 stat line. On top of that, she averaged 4.5 steals for the season. This was enough for her to win several ACC awards and become a first-team All-American. Hannah Hidalgo breaks the rules of basketball. A player should not be able to put that much defensive pressure on the opponent for almost 40 minutes and still be able to be a dominant offensive player. She should be gassed after the first quarter, but her conditioning is on a different level than everyone else. In terms of her impact on winning, there's no question. Notre Dame only played with 6 to 7 players all season due to an insane amount of injuries. But that didn't stop her from leading her team to the ACC championship game and ultimately winning it. Considering how bad the injuries were this year, it's not unfair to say without Hidalgo, Notre Dame might have been a first-round exit in both postseason tournaments. The only real negative is how bad she played against Oregon State in the Sweet 16. She chose the worst time to have the worst game. If she resembled herself at all, they most likely win. But I don't think that really bad performance devalues the entire season, especially with how well she played. Juju Watkins was the #1 recruit in one of the most stacked recruiting classes ever. To say she lived up to the hype is an understatement. She was second in the country in scoring, only behind Caitlin Clark. USC the year before was a first-round exit in both the Pac-12 tournament and the NCAA tournament. With Juju, they win the Pac-12 tournament championship, and they make it to the Elite Eight. I touched on this before the season. Juju's talent is not what makes her the best. Sure, she has a bunch of talent, but so do a lot of players. What separates Juju is her mentality. She isn't okay with being a great player. She wants to be the best. This is something a coach can't teach. They either have it or they don't. USC got a bunch of recruits and some major transfer portal pickups. None of that happens without Juju Watkins having the dominant season that she had. Usually top recruits go to a school that has great players, but not for Juju. She's a top recruit that made elite players follow her instead. She could have gone to any school in the country, but she chose to stay home and revive USC. She willingly chose to put a bunch of pressure on herself, and she delivered. Juju's a gifted scorer, but her defense is what makes her so elite. Her presence on that side of the ball more than makes up for her inefficiency. You can go to any game where Juju had an inefficient shooting night and you will find guards on the other team with an ugly field goal percentage as well. That's not a coincidence. Juju Watkins and Hannah Hidalgo were neck and neck all season, but I have to give the edge to Juju Watkins because she played a lot better during the NCAA tournament. On top of improving her efficiency, Juju needs to cut down her turnovers. 4 per game is brutal. She's already one of the best players in the country, but if she does these 2 things, she will be one of the best college players we have ever seen. That's it for this top 10 video. There will be a lot more videos of me talking about these players and other class of 2023 players as well. I plan on doing follow-ups of the individual freshman videos I made, and I'll talk about some players that weren't mentioned in this video as well. As always, thanks for watching, and I will see you later.